All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to the Zoom for Microsoft session. So before we get started, a couple of reminders, house rules, whatever you would like to call them. Number one, feel free to keep this casual, so continue eating, continue, drinking, checking your email, but also pay attention. And there's a lot of important things we're going to cover here, but I want to keep it pretty casual, right? The first half of this presentation will be us sharing with you what integrations we have with Microsoft and essentially how you can make the best out of a Microsoft Office environment as well as a Zoom environment, right? How do you bring these worlds together and have a coexisting environment? So that'll be the first half of the presentation, and then it'll be less of me talking and more of all of you talking. So hence more reason why you should pay attention in the first 20 minutes. The second 20 minutes is going to be, or 25 minutes is going to be more around us asking you, hey, of all the integrations you saw today, what would you like to see enhanced? And then what new things would you like to see, right? So as you're watching this presentation, just keep in mind all the integrations you're seeing, all the features, and what would you like to see different, what is missing here, and let's talk about that in the second half. So and then don't forget there is a concert happening today at 5 p.m., so please be there. It'll be a lot of fun. So let's get started. Zoom for Microsoft. What does this mean? I think the goal of today's presentation is to really clarify that. At a high level, we want to provide various integrations within the Microsoft environment, right? Making it easy for you to use the Microsoft products and services you use, as well as Zoom. Our strategy behind this is not just to put a button within Outlook or Teams or various other products. We want to make sure we look at the core use cases and the workflows, and we see how Zoom weaves within those and how we can actually make a difference within the products and services that you're using. So keep that in mind as well. And then this presentation will be kind of structured in two parts, or the part that I'm talking about. The first half will be more around the admin experience, so what you can do as an IT administrator to set it up. And then the second half will be watching how your users can benefit from what you just set up, right? So we'll go through that entire flow. So with that, let's get started. A little bit about myself. My name is Abhishek, and product manager here at Zoom for our meetings, webinars, and integrations. And for this conversation, it will be the integrations related to our Microsoft Office suite of integrations. So I want to get to know a little bit of you guys. How many of you here are IT administrators? Yes, feel the love for all of you. Thank you for being here. CIOs, CTOs, C anything O's? 1, 2, 3, few. Nice. Thank you so much for coming out. And then all the other generalists, right? I do everything in my company. I am the backbone. How many of you guys are? Perfect. Thank you. Again, hope this presentation is useful for you just to see how you can set up the Microsoft integrations and then how you can watch your users benefit from that. So, clicker. Thank you. So let's start a little bit about what you told us, right? So many of you in this room I've had a conversation with, and then some folks are watching online as well. Let's talk a little bit about what you told us, right? And how we got to the Zoom for Microsoft set of integrations. So you said you love Zoom for the communication platform it is, right? One unified client allowing you to have meetings, chat, phone, supported by a conference room system. And you love Microsoft for the productivity suite, right? Whether it be Outlook, whether it be Teams, whether, as an IT administrator, if you're using Azure to do deployments. So you love Microsoft for that. And you told us, hey, Zoom, I want you to blend with what I have, right? Make it easy for me to use what I have along with Zoom as well. Clicker. Thank you. And you also mentioned we use a variety of Microsoft products. Now, this sounds obvious when you say it up front, but most often when you look at what applications within Microsoft you use in your organization, Outlook is right up there, right? Skype and Teams now. So these applications are obvious and they're right up front in terms of usage. But there are other applications that you might use specifically as an administrator, like Intune, or you might have an Azure connector that you might be using for a different application that you wanted us to work with as well, right? So this is important for us to understand what you use when you talk about Microsoft products and services. Damn clicker. The other thing you've mentioned to us is you've standardized on Microsoft products, right? So for years you've been, invested in the Microsoft environment, and at least for the next, X number of years, you're going to be within that environment. So that makes it all the more important for us to continue investing, right? And it really gave us that priority and the insight to continue building more and more integrations. Yes, it worked. And the last thing, this is my favorite, which is help me justify the dollar I'm spending on Zoom, right? If I'm going to pay for Zoom, how can I take that back to my VPs, my CIOs, and how do I tell them that this works very well along with the environment that I currently have? Now, often this conversation was just more than the Microsoft environment, right? You have other SaaS applications that you wanted Zoom to work cohesively with, but for this context, again, all those Microsoft products and services. So that, in combination, got us to Zoom for Microsoft, right? Essentially, a set of integrations that allows you to use Zoom within your Microsoft Office environment and really allowing this coexistence space, right? Your users don't have to think about it as a Zoom application and a Microsoft application, and you don't have to think about it as administrators as two separate environments, right? How do we blend these tools together? Thank you. This thing. So this is what we mean by Zoom for Microsoft, right? So here are all the different integrations that we support within the Microsoft environment today. And I emphasize that it's today because our goal is that this expands over a period of time. And some of the key logos that you recognize here, right? Top-down, Outlook, OneDrive, Azure, Skype, Teams, Intune, and then, of course, Windows platform as well. So again, this is just the starting. And what we want to do is as you are using more and more Microsoft products and services, we want to understand about those and see how Zoom can fit within those environments. So let's walk through a scenario here, right? Let's say your company has standardized on Zoom and they already have been standardized on Microsoft, and it's day one and your VP or CIOs have come to you as an administrator and have said, we have all these Zoom licenses, help me take this to the hands of our users, right? Where do you start? What do you do? What's the first thing you go to? How do you make sure that your user experience for your end users are great and the onboarding process is very smooth? The first thing we recommend you doing is starting with the Azure connector that we have built, right? So this allows you to do essentially two things. One is if you're using Azure as your identity provider, set up single sign-on, but also set up the user provisioning and deprovisioning aspect, right? So for example, let's say you have got thousands of people in your organization, right? Or 10,000 or 100,000. How do you manage this at scale, right? That's where user provisioning and deprovisioning comes in. And you can automatically do that with our Azure connector, right? So that's the first place we recommend you starting off, because that at least provisions the license to your end users. Now we started talking about single sign-on, right? And configuring single sign-on is extremely critical. And although it might sound trivial, let me take a minute to explain why this is important. So as your users are using a variety of SaaS applications, they want the same login flow for each of these applications from a user experience perspective. From a technical side of view, this helps you maintain a security and compliance posture that you would otherwise have to do it in a different way with multiple different logins, right? So that's why we recommend configuring single sign-on with Zoom, right? And if you're using Azure as your identity provider, then you can do that using the Azure connector that we have, right? A quick show of hands, how many of you do use Azure as your identity provider? Good. Now, what about Okta or Ping, right? Great, some more hands. So regardless of what you use, right? Let's say you use Okta or Ping or any other identity provider, you can federate that with Azure and still leverage the same single sign-on process. So at Zoom, for example, we use Okta, right? And we have that federated with our Microsoft environment, and then we're able to experience the same single sign-on flow, right? That we would have for other applications. The same Okta window, and your users get comfortable seeing that. So I highly recommend and really stress that this is something that you set up right up front. So you've done that, right? Yeah. So you've done that, and now you want to look at what integrations we have available, right? You've configured single sign-on, you've provisioned licenses to Zoom, and now you're looking at all the Office 365 integrations that we have. So there's a couple different places that I recommend going to, right? The first place is, of course, the app source within Microsoft, right? And here are two of our most popular integrations, right? The Zoom for Teams and Zoom for Outlook integration. And we'll take a look at what these look like in just a minute. Another key point to note is actually 2 years ago, or a year ago, I forget, Microsoft rated our Zoom for Teams integration as one of the best integrations within their app source, right? So these are good examples of kind of the more mature integrations that we have. But don't stop there, right? Also go to our app marketplace where we continue to have ourselves as well as third-party developers who will build integrations with Microsoft. And then leverage other areas as well, right? Zapier is a good example. So looking at other sources where you can find integrations that are not only built by Zoom, and see if that's a good use case that you would like to introduce to your organization. Whether that be on day one or 3 months in or 6 months in is a choice that you can make based on how mature your organization is. So once you've got all those integrations enabled, and we'll again walk through what these integrations look like, the other thing we recommend you doing is enabling your calendar sync. Now let me talk to you a little bit about what the calendar sync used to look like and what it looks like today. So the calendar sync is basically a tool where when your users log in, they'll be able, whatever meetings they have scheduled on Outlook will also appear on the Zoom desktop application. In the past, your users had to do this themselves, meaning they would have to go in to the Zoom environment, enter the credentials, and then go through all the permissions, accept everything, and then calendar integration or sync would be set up. What we have available now is an account-level calendar integration, which means as IT administrators, you can do this sync on behalf of your organization or on behalf of your users. What does this mean for your end users? So remember that single sign-on that you saw, right? So they log in with that single sign-on user ID and password, and the moment they log in to Zoom, they automatically see whatever Outlook meetings they have available within the Zoom environment. So that's really powerful, and we really recommend you doing this right before day one where users start to use Zoom. And it's important that your users see all your Outlook meetings within Zoom, whether they are Zoom meetings or non-Zoom meetings. Why? Let's say your users have Outlook open, right? Then they're able to go through all the different meetings and stay on track with their schedule. But let's say they have Zoom open up because they just had a Zoom meeting and that's the window they're seeing. Then at that case, they want to still be able to see all the meetings because they don't, if there was an important lunch meeting or something, they don't want to miss that. So we do show both the Zoom and the non-Zoom meetings from Outlook within the Zoom desktop application. So it's important that you do the calendar sync at an account level so that your users don't have to go and do this, right? Now, the other thing you can take advantage of is our integration with Intune, right? So the Zoom for Intune set of integrations is essentially just focusing on your mobile application management. So how many of you here encourage bring your own devices? Yeah, so a good number. And this is often growing, right? Especially as your organization scales, it becomes more imperative to support bring your own devices. So as you are installing Zoom within these devices that customers that your organization is bringing, make sure to use our Intune integration as well, where you can deploy Zoom, and in case some employee's mobile phone gets lost, you can easily wipe out the data without having to retrieve the actual device or anything like that. So this is available, again, iOS and Android, so please be sure to check that out. Now, this is all from the integration side, right? Now let's talk a little bit about Zoom Rooms. So whether you have got Zoom Rooms purchased or you have other conference room, the first thing we recommend you doing before even you get Zoom to the hands of your users is setting up your rooms as a calendar resource object. Why? Because when your users are going to Outlook, they want to be able to see all the different rooms that they have available and get details about those rooms. What building is it in? Does it support a whiteboard? Does it have a certain feature that another room doesn't have? Is it a huddle room or a boardroom, right? They want to be able to see these information and add a Zoom room or another conference room to that Zoom meeting that they've scheduled to further augment the meeting, right? So you want to make sure this is set up even before Zoom gets to the hands of your users. So you've done all of that, right? Now you're going to go through the onboarding process, and you want to make sure that your users have a great time using Zoom. So how does everything you've just done look on the end user side? What benefits will they get? The first thing is they'll be able to log in with their single sign-on credentials, right? So this is an example of if you use Microsoft Azure as your identity provider, but if it's Okta, it'll be an Okta auth flow. If it's Ping, it'll be a Ping auth flow. But essentially, when they log in with when your users log in with the single sign-on credentials, they go through the same flow that they have experienced with other SaaS applications. Now, once they do that, because you've set up the calendar sync at an account level, automatically, Outlook meetings are now going to show up on your Zoom desktop application. So a couple things to note here. One, right now, we don't have a presence sync. That's something we are working on, where in Outlook, if you are do not disturb, that sync, that presence will also be ported over to Zoom. The other piece that we're working on is to bring over information like out-of-office messages or public events versus private events that your users set up. So those information will be ported over as well and displayed in your Zoom desktop application. In present, what it is every meeting will be shown, and those that are Zoom meetings will have a start or a join button, depending if you're the host or not, respectively. And those that are not a Zoom meeting will be marked as not a Zoom meeting, right? And something that we're considering to do in the future is give an option where you can convert a non-Zoom meeting into a Zoom meeting, right? So think of this example. You've got 5 people, and you want to have a meeting, and then you've just realized that 2 of them are not able to make it, right? You want to be able to quickly convert that to a Zoom meeting. Everyone gets updated, and then those 2 people who couldn't join can join the meeting. So these are some of the examples that we're working on, which will be coming out as part of when the users log in with that single sign-on credential. But as of now, they'll be able to see all their calendar events in Outlook available on the Zoom desktop application as well. Another feature that's a work in progress is a rich contact profile, as we'd like to call it. So today, we port over some information as part of the Azure connector, right? What we want to do is get more into the details of who you're trying to meet with or who you're trying to have a chat conversation with. So take this example that you see on the screen. We want to bring over details like what job title is that person, what department are they from, who do they report to, right? Do they have an alternate phone number? So these are kind of examples that we would want to show from what you have on the Microsoft AD side, Azure AD side, and bring that information into the Zoom desktop application. And we want to leverage the Azure connector that we have to do this. So that, again, this goes back to the first thing we saw of setting up, using that Azure connector that we have to set up things like single sign-on and user provisioning, where information like this will now be automatically ported over. Right, so now your users are familiar with Zoom, and they want to schedule their first Zoom meeting. So what can they do? What are the different options? So let's say they go to Outlook first in order to schedule a Zoom meeting. Today, as administrators, you have 2 options. You have the client plugin, as we call it, and you have the Outlook add-in. So I want to take a moment to talk about these 2 because it can be a little bit confusing if you're looking at this for the first time. So the client plugin is essentially something that lives within the user's desktop application, right? So it's like an MSI file, for example, that the user can install, or you can embed it as part of your package that you deploy to, part of the Zoom package that you deploy. And essentially, this side loads to Outlook at runtime, right? Now, this was our older integration that we built, and we've had this integration for a couple of years now. The advantage with this integration is that it's tied directly to your desktop client, right? So your desktop client is signed in. This will automatically be signed in as well. And you click, add a Zoom meeting, and it automatically adds a meeting to your calendar event. What has happened is in the last year or so, both Microsoft as well as Apple, for those who you have a heavy Mac deployment, have had some upgrades to their security posture, right? And this has prompted, as we've worked with them, this has prompted us to shift our focus towards the add-in, right? And we've spent the last about year or so to make sure that the add-in and the plugin have good feature parity. And there's still a few things that, from a user experience perspective, we will continue to improve on. But I do want to make one thing clear. whether you use the Outlook plugin or the client-based plugin or the Outlook add-in, we'll still be providing technical support. So don't worry, like the technical support piece is still there. But what we recommend is to move towards the Outlook add-in, right? Because it is a model that's supported by Microsoft, and we'll take a look at what this looks like. This is using their APIs, and it's also supported by Apple, and it's a preferred option from Apple. So if you have a heavy Mac deployment, that's something to keep in mind as well. So again, the client-based plugin is not going away, so to speak. So if you're still using it, it takes you, X number of months or a year to move over to the add-in. We're still going to be providing technical support, but keep in mind that we have been receiving feedback from both Microsoft and Apple to move towards the add-in, as it's a better security posture for the environment. So what does the add-in look like, right? So we've used APIs from Microsoft, and here is a Apple Outlook environment, and we'll take a quick look at what the add-in does look like. So I have a Outlook event here, and I want to send a meeting to great@zoomcustomer.com. So what I can do is click on the top, you see the add a Zoom meeting and settings option, right? That's our Zoom add-in. Think of that as your scheduler that lives within Outlook, and it's deployable by you as an admin at a global level, at an account level, global level, group level, as well as user level. So when the user does click on the settings option or the add Zoom meeting option for the first time, they get a panel on the right, which allows you to specify your meeting options and then add a Zoom meeting, which will essentially embed Zoom meeting details within the Outlook calendar event, right? Now, once this is done the first time, the Zoom add-in will remember what settings you chose and will automatically use that when you click on add a Zoom meeting and following terms, right? So that allows you essentially to have a one-click to add a Zoom meeting to your Outlook calendar event. So the advantage behind the Outlook add-in is that this space that you see on the right is entirely customizable by Zoom, right? And what that means is in the future, if we wanted to add a few things, it's very easy to keep doing that, right? And for you as administrators, all you'd have to do is go on your Microsoft admin portal and allow for automatic updates, so the updates seem very natural to your end users, right? They don't have to manually approve any update or anything like that, or you don't have to worry about those updates, which you would have to do with the client-based plugin. What else is an advantage? Outlook mobile application. So this is a feature that's currently work in progress, and it's APIs from Microsoft that are still in beta, where we can now schedule a Zoom meeting from an Outlook mobile application, right? And this is very powerful because when you have a client-based plugin, you could never do this, right? Because it's tied to the client. Or to the client environment. With the add-in, since it's API-based, all Microsoft did was open up some APIs on Outlook Mobile, and our existing add-in just fit right within the mobile environment, right? So to take a look, what would happen is you would add something called an online meeting that Microsoft calls. It's essentially your conferencing option. And when you toggle that button, you'll have a Zoom meeting that gets added to your Outlook mobile application. So this is currently in work, so we're working closely with Microsoft to try and test the APIs, get a build going, and once we have a stable version that's also approved by Microsoft, we will be sure to put it out and you guys can have a try. All right, Teams. So Outlook is still kind of, from the older days, right? You're using Outlook and you want to schedule a meeting, that's great, but what if you're standardized on Microsoft Teams and you want to be able to schedule a Zoom meeting, start a Zoom meeting from Microsoft Teams? What are we doing there? Before we get into the details, how many of you here are using Teams, thinking about Teams? Yeah, good majority. So this becomes a very important integration for you as you're thinking about how you can use Zoom within your Microsoft environment. So the first thing that we have, and this is, by the way, available today on the App Store, so you can go and look at our Zoom for Teams integration and download, and you'll be able to play this. You'll be able to play around with this. What we have is a Zoom tab that lives on your left persistent bar, right? So you see the little Zoom icon on the left bar? That's our tab, right? And that tab allows you to start a meeting, schedule a meeting, and also wirelessly share content right from your Teams environment. And the best thing is you can also get a list of all your Zoom meetings presented within this Teams environment. So let me walk you through some examples, and then we'll go through how you can start a meeting, schedule a meeting, and what that meeting experience looks like. But the first thing to note here is, yes, as an administrator, you can pin that Zoom Meetings tab to the left sidebar so that everyone in your organization get to see it. And yes, for example, if you felt that this was a little bit confusing, I currently have a Meet Now option as well as a Zoom option. My users are going to get confused. You can disable the Meet Now option at an admin level, right? Again, Microsoft has APIs for this. So when your users are in Teams, wherever they are, they could be in a team channel, they could be in a one-on-one chat, they can always click this button and come to what we like to call as a Zoom tab or Zoom environment for you to engage with Zoom, right? So let's take a look at a few examples. Let's say you wanted to start a meeting, right? In this environment, I wanted to start a meeting with Oded, right? All I would have to do is click on that Start a Meeting button, select Oded, and Oded is being populated in this list because he is in my contact directory. So it's the same contact directory that's being powered in Outlook, that's being powered in Teams, right? So it's using the same contact list, and now you can start a Zoom meeting with him, right? And what will happen is Oded will get notified within Teams, and if his Zoom application is active, he'll also get a ping in the Zoom application, right, to say, hey, Abhishek is trying to start a meeting with you. And what will happen to me is I will automatically get into the Zoom meeting, much like what you would experience if you were in the Zoom desktop application. Now, what about scheduling a meeting, right? Now, let's say you wanted to meet with a group of people to discuss some important project details, right? You can now do this with the scheduling option, and you can. The best part about this is you can take both participants that are internal and external to your organization. Internal works the same way as what we saw with the Start a Meeting, right? So you can pick contacts from your contact directory and schedule a meeting with them. They'll also be given a notification in Teams as well as get a notification in Zoom. Now, what you can do is also enter an email address where it says participants, and they will be notified via email to say that Abhishek is trying to start a meeting with them. Schedule a meeting with them. Why is that important? Let's say you have 3 people and you keep meeting on a project, and suddenly now you want to bring an external vendor or an external company to talk about something. Maybe it's a consultant, but they're not within your organization, right? So you can easily just put their email address and then make this an external meeting. So giving the user the choice whether it's an internal or an external meeting, right? Rooms, automatically, all the rooms that you choose are being populated from your room resources. So going back to that first step where you added Zoom rooms and other conference rooms in your Exchange Calendar resource, those resources will be queried here to pull the right room. Another feature that's actually was released between the time we made this presentation till today is the availability feature, right? So let's say I'm inviting 5 of you to a Zoom meeting, right? I'm scheduling a meeting with you, and all of us are part of the same organization. What the availability feature does is it looks at our Outlook calendar or our Teams calendar, either one, and it picks the most available time for all of us, right? Maybe 10 to 10:30 is when everyone is free, and then it will show you that as an option where you can select that, right? So that's an example of an update that went out between the time we created this slide till today. Of course, you can have start and end meetings, and then start and end time for your meeting, and then all your different meeting options, right? Password, one-time meeting ID versus personal meeting ID, enable join before host, all these scheduling options that you're familiar with, that you saw in the Outlook add-in, as well as your Zoom desktop application, those will be made available here as well. So great, you've either started a meeting or you've scheduled a meeting. Now you want to click on join, or you've already got into the meeting experience. What happens? So the Zoom desktop application will be prompted, and the meeting will be run within that environment, right? So it's important to note, we're not embedding the Zoom environment within the Teams environment, right? The Zoom meeting is still in its own window, and it's being overlaid on top of the Teams window. But once you're done with the meeting and you press end meeting or you leave the meeting, you'll go right back into Teams. So we're not prompting the Zoom application to come in front of the Teams window, and that's done intentionally, right? Because from a user experience perspective, you might be chatting with someone, you might be looking at a file or a wiki within Teams, and then you escalate to a Zoom meeting or you join a meeting, and once that's done, you want to go back and continue your work on Teams, right? So it's done intentionally that way. We just use the Zoom desktop application to run the actual meeting. That's it. So we're done with that, and now you're in a meeting, right? How do you share a file, right? So today, let's say you've got files or content within OneDrive that you want to talk about during your Zoom meeting. Today, the way it works is you would have to open up the OneDrive file separately and then share that, right? Like while you're in a Zoom meeting. And what that means is if you've decided to share that entire window or that entire desktop, if you have multi-desktop environment, you will have a message that comes in from your wife or your husband and it says, hey, don't forget to pick up groceries, right? And that will show up as a message while you're presenting. So we don't want those. What we want to do is for you to be able to be in a meeting and then go, I want to share exactly this file, right? So with the help of the OneDrive Outlook picker, OneDrive picker as Microsoft calls it, you can select the Microsoft OneDrive option when you say share files and pick the exact file that you want to share. And then we'll just be sharing that file alone, right? So this way you don't have to worry about what happens if another notification comes in or if you want to do something on the side while you're sharing in a meeting, sorry. Yes. This is available today. Great question. This is available today. It is a more recent announcement. So I think about a month ago, we made this available. Yes. Yeah, can we wait for questions till the end? Yeah, let's wait for questions till the end. So this is all great. Now you've been scheduling a meeting, you've joined a meeting, you've experienced the meeting. Now what about Zoom rooms, right? I'm in Outlook, or I'm in Teams, I've added a room. How does that look like on a Zoom room? So on the Zoom room side, you will still get the same one click to join or one click to start a meeting, right? As long as the meeting URL is present within the Outlook invite or the Teams invite, it'll be showing up here within your Zoom environment. So that's important to note because, again, it doesn't matter whether you're using Outlook or Outlook add-in or the Teams add-in, you will still be able to, if you schedule a Zoom meeting, have it show up on the Zoom room environment. One thing to note here that I didn't get to in the Teams or the Outlook slide is when you're using Outlook and when you're using Teams, these environments talk to each other, right? At least that's the way the Zoom has built its integration. What that means is if I schedule a Zoom meeting from Teams, it'll show up in Outlook. It'll also show up in the Teams calendar view, right? If I do it in Outlook, where I schedule it from the Outlook add-in, the Teams environment will also be able to see it. And of course, in both these scenarios, the Zoom desktop application will also see the Zoom meeting, right? So wherever you are, when you schedule a Zoom meeting, it'll be made available in other platforms. Right, so that is Zoom for Microsoft, right? So all those integrations, all those workflows, that's what we want to do with the help of Zoom for Microsoft. So again, here's a quick slide if you want to take a picture of what the Zoom for Microsoft set of integrations are, that's this. And keep in mind, this is what's available today, right? And as we're talking with more folks like yourself, we want to improve this and add more logos to this page. With that, let's hear from you, where instead of kind of opening this up into just any question, we wanted to streamline this and to kind of get some specific feedback, right? So you heard a lot of integrations today. And what enhancements would you like to see for these integrations? So let's talk about those existing ones for a couple minutes, and then we'll talk about what net new things would you like to see that's not presented here, right? And we have Varun on the back.
Yeah, so if anyone wants to provide feedback, just raise your hand. I'll run the mic to you, and if you could just say your name, your company name, and then you can go into the details.
Hi, my name is Tommy John with Fusion Academy.
Hi, Tommy.
My question is about the integration inside of Outlook.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering when you do a invite, are you looking at the ability to be able to edit the template that gets emailed to people on that, or is that going to be just frozen to your template?
Edit a template as in how it appears on the Outlook desktop?
Right,
on the Outlook
when it gets sent out as an invite.
Yeah, so the invite template, so to speak, so basically when you add a Zoom meeting from Outlook, we add the meeting details to your description field, right? And the way that's parsed, or the way you define that is defined by you as an admin on the Zoom side, or in your custom branding. So if you choose to add your logo, don't want to see some information, but you want to see other information.
Oh, so all of that is editable?
All of that is editable as an admin on your Zoom portal, right? As a user, you can't edit those information. Gotcha. You can't edit the branding, for example.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, this is Ravi from JDA Software.
Yeah, hi Ravi.
We have large deployment of teams all over the organization, and currently a lot of I would say about 2/3 of the organization is already using Teams for
Yep.
meetings. Not all of them have audio conferencing enabled from Microsoft Teams, but now we are looking at Zoom. So is there any plan to integrate Zoom meetings for other collaborative functionality like meeting notes or recording? Because today, if you schedule a Zoom meeting through Zoom, through Teams, you mentioned the Zoom desktop application opens up, you run the meeting there, and you go back to the Teams
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
But if the artifacts of the meeting are to be captured and
Yeah.
kind of made that persistent, is there any information on that?
Yeah, so that's definitely on the roadmap. It's on the roadmap to, for example, as you mentioned, if you have recorded your meeting, if you took some notes during the meeting, and for those of you who are in the product keynote, we have meeting notes coming out, right? So if you took some notes there, being able to take these information and pass it back to Teams is definitely on the roadmap. As of now, the most important things we want to get to, since we're talking about Teams, the most important things we want to look at for the Teams roadmap is solidifying the integration that we have, right? So there's still a few things, for example, supporting recurring meetings, being able to schedule those. So some like smaller line items first. And then we also want to look at taking Zoom Phone, right? Our cloud-based PBX system, and embedding that within the Zoom tab that we have. And the other option, and the other thing on the roadmap for immediate terms is being able to start and schedule a Zoom meeting from a channel, right? So right now, everything you saw is at a global level. Wherever you are, you click on that button. But what if I'm in a channel and I want to click on a button and start or schedule a meeting with context of that channel? So those three things are, I would say, like immediate priority that we were working on based on customer feedback. And then after that, it's items like these. That's on the roadmap. But it definitely is on the roadmap. Yes. We'll take maybe one or two more questions, and then we'll move on.
And then
to
we'll
the next
switch?
one.
Okay.
Yeah.
My question is in regards to chat notifications in Teams.
Yes.
So I communicate with a lot of people outside of our org in
Yes.
Zoom, and I want to be able to get that notification in Teams. Is that anything that can be done or is currently available?
So to be clear, do you mean if you schedule a Zoom meeting and then get notified that you have a Zoom meeting scheduled, or
More after a meeting with people in Zoom,
Yeah.
external, they'll send me a chat or something through Zoom currently, just a message, hey Drew, just quick chat, a message in Zoom. Is there a way to get that to pop up, a notification, or say that there's a chat message in Zoom in Teams?
So I think this, I'll take that as like a sort of a broader thing, which is federating chat, right? Or giving you some element of how do we move from this chat environment to this chat environment. Federation and line items like that are things that we are considering. We are working with a few other providers to just test and see how federation of chat systems look like. So don't have a date or a timeline yet, but it's something we want to start exploring deeper starting early next year. Let's do one more, and then we'll switch to another.
Hi, Abhishek.
Yeah.
My
Hi.
name is Prashant Tomar from Bio 520.
Hi, Prashant.
My question is about the integration of Business Central with Team, especially when we are doing some prospects and calling customers. Is there any direct integration? Are you guys planning in the future so we can use Business Central along with Team? Along with Zoom?
Business Central along with Zoom. So I'm actually not familiar with Business Central, so could you clarify?
So it's a
little
part
bit?
of like a dynamic suite.
Okay, got
it's
it.
like they have dynamic CRM.
Okay.
Which I think pretty much
Yeah,
a lot
Dynamics, I'm
of
familiar.
vendors are using right now. But Business Central is emerging kind of an ERP for the smaller businesses, and it's really a lot implementation going on.
Okay.
So that's my concern is that because there's no direct link from Business Central to any of the competitors, your competitors as well.
Okay, got it. Yeah, so to be honest, it's not something that we have looked at, but after this, let's chat, and then I would like to collect some more information. Yeah. Thank you. So since we have about 5-ish minutes, let's kind of move on to the next one, which is want to keep this a little bit more creative, a little bit more open-minded. What new integration should we build, right? Like whatever you saw today, let's assume we continue to keep making enhancements to those, right? Teams, Azure, Outlook. I think we just started talking about now like Dynamics, Business Central. But what net new applications should we be looking at that you're using in your environment? We have one there, and I saw one more here. Could you just say it on the mic?
OneNote for meeting notes?
Okay, got it. So would you be, just to clarify, right, OneNote for meeting notes, would that be something like you're in Zoom, and then you might click on a notes button, and then it pops up OneNote on the side, you can take a quick note? Is that what you're thinking around? Or
Yeah, either that or save off to OneNote.
Save off to OneNote? Okay, so whatever you've done, save it off to OneNote, right? Okay, I saw a few more head nodding for the OneNote piece. Yeah, how many of you do use OneNote within you? Yeah, that's a big one. Yep, and then that's something we do, to close the loop there, we have been considering it, right, to say how we can embed or think of OneNote being presented within the Zoom meeting environment. Saving off to OneNote is, I think, good, but if we could give you the opportunity, the other thing we're exploring is also the opportunity to show you OneNote while you're in a Zoom meeting, right? Because you might want to take advantage of some styling or formatting that's presented in OneNote, which we may not offer right out of the box in our text editor. I saw a few more hands this side. I saw one more here. I think it was you.
So we're changing our workflow because of integrating Zoom with Microsoft and the way we schedule meetings, and we really would like to see features added where you can segregate or bifurcate what you want to tell internal staff for, like, show up to a meeting, bring refreshments, whatever, and what executives see when they receive the meeting invitation. And it causes our executive assistants to literally have to schedule 2 separate meetings, copy and paste the Zoom information across. So
what
Microsoft doesn't do that natively. We're hoping maybe you'll solve the problem.
So what kind of information, just to get some more clarity, what kind of information would you like to, I guess, show to one set of audience versus another, right? Could you, yeah.
Well, to elaborate, we're a private equity firm, so our executives don't want to see things like have someone bring coffee, have someone bring an extra whiteboard, whatever it is for office services, right? Or for even IT to bring to the meeting, or have someone there to facilitate a meeting. And they, that is the culture, right, in a lot of higher end and large enterprise organizations. And so what we really want is the ability to bifurcate in some way, but have it connected, right? So that when we set up a meeting, if that meeting time changes, there aren't 2 distinct meetings that are set up. One gives the AV and IT services and office services the instructions they need to facilitate the meeting and those kinds of instructions. And the other is the actual invite to the executives and outside third parties outside of our organization that may be joining that just want to know this is a meeting on a particular deal or whatever it is, right, subject to the meeting. And then even further, possibly, what shows up on the room scheduler, because it could be confidential. And you may not want someone to walk by that room and see confidential information.
Yeah, the last piece I know we can solve it today with by making an event private or the equivalent of that, where then the Zoom room will just notify it as, let's say, Abhishek.Balaji's Zoom meeting, right? You want 2 different messages, I understand. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, essentially different content for the same meeting show to different audiences, and you as a host being able to decide, or an executive admin deciding, group A gets to see these things, group B gets to see a different value for the same fields, right? Yeah, yeah, that's something we can look into.
So Teams puts the meeting recording directly into Stream. It's another Microsoft service.
Yeah.
So the ability to do the same thing with the recording from Zoom would be appreciated.
Yeah, so Stream integration is actually something we are looking into. I mean, we didn't initially scope out the recording use case, but yeah, that's something we can definitely look into. That's a good idea. How many of you do use Microsoft Stream, by the way? Okay. I see a few more questions. Maybe we'll do one more.
Yeah, let's do one more because we're close to time.
Okay.
All right, I see you over there.
Paper,
I'm coming.
scissors.
I'm Peter with Pyrotech.
Hey.
For the file sharing inside the meeting, do you have plan to work with SharePoint?
file sharing inside of a meeting.
Yeah, right now you can share through OneDrive. Do you plan to integrate with SharePoint?
Oh, directly with SharePoint? Yeah, so that is something we did plan out. We wanted to start off with OneDrive just because we knew what we heard was most organizations are thinking or moving to OneDrive, but it is in the roadmap to build it out for SharePoint.
And for the mobile device add-on for the Outlook, do you have plan to add for like an iOS mail app for something like the native mail app on the mobile device?
Native mail app on the mobile device. Could you expand on that?
Like for the iOS mail app.
Okay.
Instead of the Outlook for iOS app.
Oh, so being able to add a Zoom meeting with the native iOS app. So to our knowledge, we actually don't have APIs for that. We can take another look, and maybe we can chat afterwards to see if you have any API suggestions or anything. But to our knowledge, we actually cannot integrate in that level with the native application. That's why I wanted to use the Outlook application itself. Cool. So I know we are at time. Varun, you do one more, or?
No, we're at time.
Okay.
If anyone else has any other questions, feel free to find Abhishek post-session.
Perfect. And complete this survey to win a prize. Thank you so
Yes.
much.